Didn't do- Hey everybody, this is Petey from the Spinner Rack, and we also have
Calvin Ellis, ready to rock.
today.
It's a
There,
very special episode.
yeah, it definitely is, and we're going to talk about the new book from Quentin Tarantino, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Is that what it is? I'm always trying to mix that one up. Let's see. In Hollywood. Yep, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I always want to say America, but it's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And he's doing the book to give you some bits that he didn't get to use in the film, or else it'd probably be a 6 to 8 hour film. Might have to split it in two parts like Kill Bill. So I think we need to wait, but you want to give us, before we get and play anything from this Joe Rogan experience, so we can, not attack it, but just point out some things. Do you have any thoughts you want to initially say,
Well,
Cal?
one, I'm gonna let everyone know right now. I make no promises as to whether or not this is going to be attacked or not. So that's number one. And number two, well, Joe Rogan is a fighting aficionado, and also a very, he's a self-admittedly a big fan of Bruce Lee. So he has Quentin Tarantino on the show, and they're discussing the scene uh, the scene which created more controversy, I think, than Quentin Tarantino was expecting, as to Bruce Lee fighting this fictionalized Bruce Lee that he has in his movie, fighting the fictionalized bodyguard that Quentin Tarantino created for the film as well. If you're talking, you're muted, man.
When I initially heard about it, it was one of those things that I was like, well, I'm hoping he doesn't do it. And it kind of felt like um, this sort of thing where Quentin is kind of, this is opinion. The idea that he really liked Kung Fu, which was originally a Bruce Lee vehicle, and David Carradine, became the guy. And then, of course, who is the great master in Kill Bill, but David Carradine. So this is a thread that you can follow. I don't know if it's direct, but there's something there. If he's like deciding that, and he says for specific reasons why he's saying what he's saying, which I can't really go along with. But we're gonna play this because I wanted to hold off for a little while. So I know Quentin's gonna say something that's gonna get us in trouble. He's gonna curse in there, and I'm not ready to bleep it yet. So hold on. Let's let this Joe Rogan thing go.
An experience. Another thing in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that got controversial was the Bruce Lee scenes. Yeah. A lot of people
Damn right it was. I'm sorry.
Felt like you made Bruce Lee into an asshole.
Yeah, well, okay, that's okay. I'm a little hesitant to talk about this because I don't want like this to be the only thing, all right, that people pull from this show. But I figured you were going to bring it up especially because I heard you guys go back and forth on it in a little bit. I mean, where I'm coming from is I can understand his daughter having a problem with it. It's her fucking father, all right? I get that. But anybody else, go suck a dick.
That's what I was worried of. That part that is to basically to us right now, where it's just where people have a right to have issue with
Joe
it.
Rogan. Joe Rogan got a problem with it. He's got him on the show, and he's like, "Hey, you got a problem with Joe Rogan? Well, hey, I got something for you. Yeah, get up on his shaft."
Well,
Get
it's
up on.
not like it has to be. He can't. I mean, obviously, he could Bruce Lee him right and turn Bruce Lee into a verb. He could Bruce Lee him like right now and break, but it's like he wants him to come back, and obviously, you have someone on your show. You can't. Now, this is going to be very different than the Bill Maher clip I have, but I'm not sure we're going to play that. But it's like he at
Well,
least
you,
has
you,
played, huh?
well, I understand where. I mean, because if you would have to have seen some of the stuff that Joe Rogan said before he has Quentin Tarantino on the show. dealing with that particular aspect. And then, of course, you want Quentin Tarantino to have some freedom to speak.
Yeah.
No, okay, look, these are what the criticisms are. This is the controversy. What do you have to say about it? And he sums it up with, hey, go over here and suck one. That's pretty much his explanation, defense, everything about that scene, which I think really summarizes where he was at. He just did it because he wanted to do it. There's no bigger concept or anything of that nature into that scene. And that, for those people who feel it's disrespectful, that's what makes it disrespectful. For those people who have an issue with it, that's where the issue comes with it. Because you have no understand. This is not a fictional character when you're doing Bruce Lee. This is somebody who was a living, breathing person. We have, man, I hate to make it sound like it was that long ago, but we have historical documents. Okay, you have firsthand accounts of Bruce Lee, his character, how he interacted with people, his fighting ability, all of that stuff. And you decide, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to come over and create this caricature where I'm going to have Bruce Lee be this fop, this blowhard, this stuffed shirt, and then I'm going to have my guy, who's not even real. Yep, I'm gonna have him throw him into a car. And if you got a problem with that, well, hey, screw you, buddy. In my movie, and I'll do whatever the hell I want. That's where the issue in that this particular film. I've been an aficionado of Bruce Lee since my uncle was into Bruce Lee. Mm-hmm. Very much so. Had like a whole wall plastered Bruce Lee images, and then he took these Bruce Lee films when I was really young. It was a triple feature in those days when you could still, go for a triple feature. We might have sat and saw everything twice, but we were there for a while. We came in there, it was light, we left dark. And I even remember it was Fist of Fury. This is at least how they were named at the time. We saw Fist of Fury, Chinese Connection game. Sat through everything, and I was just mesmerized with Bruce Lee after that. So I got into him. I read the books that he wrote on Tao of Jeet Kune Do. He had a book on Wing Chun fighting that I read. Read biographies, saw the films, articles here and there. So, without a doubt, I'm gonna say that, yeah, my knowledge of Bruce Lee, both in terms of the legendary stuff and the historical stuff is, pretty sound. So when I'm looking at the film and watching him do this, I'm like, look, this never happened. There was never any scene or anything reported. There's only one story that's even close to this. Okay, there's only one story that's even close to this. And if he had done that, that would have been close to the Bruce Lee's character at the end of the day. But he decided he just wanted to make something out of whole cloth for whatever his own reasons were. I won't go too much into that, but he just comes across as an incredible jerk at the end of the day for taking this guy. And that's something else where I don't think he understands. He doesn't understand how much of an inspirational figure Bruce Lee is to so many different people for so many different reasons. He was visionary. He was incredibly ahead of his time, and beloved by so many people inside and outside of the fighting world. So to see somebody who is given such much reverence and such much respect, and your idea is like, yeah, he might as well be some, bathroom paper. I can just fling him, any particular use. And you had no foundation for it other than the fact that, hey, I just want to do this. Then yeah, people are going to have issue with it, and you can't dismiss it with the simple go suck some.
Yeah. So let's play a little more.
And the thing about it though is, even if you just look at it, it's obvious Cliff tricked him. That's how he was able to do it. He tricked him. Mm-hmm. It's like it's explained more in the book, but the thing is, like they do a two falls out of three contest. Mm-hmm. So
no, they don't.
I love shit like that, and he has a method, and his method is to give the guy the first fall. Okay, do your fucking move, dude.
Right.
Let me see your move. All right, and he gives him no resistance whatsoever. The guy does the move. He knocks him on his ass. And Cliff, and there's like 4 different ways Bruce could have come at him the second time that Cliff would have had very little defense against. But most of the time, if a guy has a particular move and it looks like the guy's a lunkhead, just a big mouth, who can't really defend himself, they do the second move again. I mean, they do the first move again, second time. Well, now Cliff knows what it is. So he prepares for it, he pivots, he catches him, he throws his ass into the car.
Right.
And now the third time will be the charm and he gets broken up. But he just tricked him. And Bruce realized he got tricked. If Cliff hadn't been so vicious.
The battle, the sort of mixing it up, is the third, or is the hit Bruce getting hit the end of the fight of this portion? Like he's turned it in. I mean, I guess he's writing a lot of times. Well, it's a lot of times it's like one of those things where
there's no 2 out of 3.
Well, it's more like it's more like he's interpreting what he wrote in the book or stuff that's in his head about this to kind of explain it when it's just like there's a fall, there's a what's the name, and then there's a long fight that looks like Bruce Lee's in trouble, and then of course whether we believe it's a 2 out of 3, we have we have the stunt coordinator. She comes out and who's kicking Bruce is behind. That's what she comes out and says. So I mean, that's it. That's what Prince would bleed. If it bleeds, it leads. You don't have. That's what people saw. So.
No, it's all malarkey. Bottom line is he created this character, and his character was going to beat everybody up, even if it was Bruce Lee. Hey, it'd be really cool if we had your character fling around Bruce Lee. You become, what's that trophy? The Wharf Effect. We're going to show how tough and cool you are by flinging Bruce Lee into this car. Now, mind you, you don't exist. You have no rep, no building, no reputation whatsoever. But we're going to take this guy who definitely does have one, and hey, just toss him to the side again. It's again, this is just some Tarantino nonsense. Nobody who's ever fought, approaches anything of that nature. Well, okay, I'm going to take the first move. The first move could be the last move. All right, this guy comes over here, kicks you in the chest. That could be it. I'm going to take the first move at the end of the day. But you can do that in a fictional world. In a fictional world, you can come over. I'm going to take the first punch and then look at him and say, "Oh, my turn." Yeah, that's great in a movie. At the end of the day, and that's where that was his approach to it. I mean, look, the explanation that he's given is just malarkey. You wanted to have a film where you flung Bruce Lee, into this car. You should just say, "Hey, I did it because I wanted to fling him into this car." There's no 2 out of 3 falls. You go and print. You got your guy beating him up. You just don't have anything. You didn't have any respect for Bruce Lee, and you decided that he was fodder for your film, and that's what you did. At the very least, ended up.
Well, I think as we go along here, because Joe Rogan has brought up the great Gene LaBelle and saying this is kind of what this Cliff guy is kind of based on, but he looks like Brad Pitt in the movie, so it's a little different from this guy who's like built like a truck, and
like all accounts, I've never seen a picture of Gene LaBelle, but all the accounts that I'm hearing of Gene LaBelle is that he was like a 8 or something of that nature. He was just a really big guy, and not only was he a big guy, but he was practicing judo. That's just 2 things that you don't really want to mess with. Foundationally, judo, most people, even people who haven't practiced it, most people know that judo is about what? Using the other guy's strength and holds and locks. If you study judo, one of the first things that you learn is how to fall, because you're taking this to the ground. You're taking this to the ground at the end of the day. And it's great in certain aspects. You get a guy who's big and he's strong and he knows how to do judo. Oh, it's a big mess at the end of the day. It's not something that you don't want to grapple with. And you can keep at a distance, great. But then if he's strong, well, that's me getting too much. But on all, there was one account with Bruce Lee and Jim LaBelle where I forget exactly how it happens, but I think Jim LaBelle somehow he's Bruce Lee and he's running around with him on his back. And Bruce Lee is screaming like, put me down right now. And Jim LaBelle's not listening to him. He's like, hey, if I put you down, Bruce Lee is like telling him, put me down right now, or I'm gonna knock you out. He says, well, then I'm not gonna put you down. If I put you down, he said, I'm gonna knock you out. So he's just having fun with him at the end of the day. Finally puts him down. And he backs off. He's like, no, sorry about the whole thing. Didn't mean to make you upset. But Bruce Lee also looked at the whole situation and said, for all of the fighting that he was doing, he had nothing to combat that situation that he got into with Jim. There was nothing that he had within his repertoire that would have allowed him to get out of it. So, and because of that, he actually approached Jungle Bill and was like, look, show me what, this is standard Bruce Lee stuff. Bruce Lee, and it's on record, he lost fights to people. And if he lost fights, he asked people, look, what was the move that you used to beat me? Show me what you used to beat me. Those type, so he can incorporate it to his own style, because he was this guy who was supremely confident in his abilities. Okay. But he also realized that his abilities were limited. And if he saw something that he said, hey, this was something that, countered everything that I've been working on, I want to learn this so I can make certain I can counter it, I can incorporate it. And this is something that he would learn. I mean, at the time with Gene LeBell, he wasn't even doing anything with judo at that time, but you'll get to see some of those moves that he does with judo, like in Game of Death, when he gets to that second level of the pagoda and he's using the locks, he's doing the floor fighting, he's doing some floor fighting with the guy. Those are things that he had learned previously. So that right, that story, when he does that, you have to do the whole thing. It shows that, yeah, Bruce could be cocky, he could definitely be arrogant, but he also recognized that if somebody knew something that he didn't and it could make him a better fighter, he can humble himself and say, look, show me what it is that you just did on me. I want to learn that.
So he's going to get into a little bit of that, and he's going to do his explanation of how the Gene LeBell Tarantino thing, which is Joe Rogan has never brought up in any of the stuff that he said about this. So
We even appreciated it.
Do you know about the history of
Oh yeah,
Bruce Lee
Gene
and
LeBell. Yeah, of course.
Did you research that before?
Yeah, well, I've always known it and
Right.
everything, and the stuntman hated Bruce.
Really?
On Green Hornet. No, it's in Matthew Polly's book, and before that, it's always been known. That's why Gene LeBell was brought on to teach Bruce respect for American stuntmen. Bruce had nothing but disrespect for stuntmen, and he was always hitting them. He was always hitting them with his feet. He was always tagging. It's called tagging. When you hit a stuntman for real. And he was always tagging him with his feet, and he was always tagging him with his fist, and they got to be the point where no, I refuse to work with him.
Really?
And he had nothing but disrespect for American stuntmen.
So I would like to add. So then Gene LeBell became someone who Bruce tossed around in on the show all the time. So what? If this is the answer, he's like bringing in the hero Gene LeBell to there's videos of him just tossing Gene LeBell around because he's a stuntman. That's what they do. How do you bring in this hero, this guy who probably weighed more, could possibly beat Bruce Lee up, and all they do is work together and they become friends? It's so ridiculous.
Because it's malarkey. He didn't do any damn research.
Mm-hmm.
The scenes with one of the things that Gene LeBell, and this is established, did teach Bruce Lee was how to stage a fight for the camera. That was something that he hadn't done. He had been acting since he was a kid, but he hadn't really done any fighting. The stuff that he was doing, they were like, okay, this is how you stage it from the camera. Was it true that Bruce Lee was hard on stuntmen? Yes, but what he doesn't say is that Bruce Lee, and this was people who fought with him, Bruce Lee, everybody hands down said this was remarkably fast. He was very fast. And so having to slow down, okay, enough so he wasn't tagging, as Quentin Tarantino was saying, is something that he did have to learn. And they could bring in Gene LeBell, because Gene LeBell, big guy, tough guy, he was someone that if he got tagged, it wasn't that big of a, it wasn't going to be that big of a deal for him. Everything could start going forward. He's like, I mean, it's not even a half truth at the end of the day. And it's not something that you can't find out with just a little bit of research, as opposed, as for him coming on the show. That bit about no respect for American stuntmen, that sounds incredible. I don't want to go that far, at least not yet. But Bruce Lee, it's documented that Bruce Lee gave stuntmen, be it American stuntmen, the stuntmen he worked with in Thailand, the stuntmen he worked with in Hong Kong, these guys had to really work. And I don't think he understands it either. Bruce Lee was an exceptional martial artist. He was an exceptional martial artist. So if you were a stuntman working with him, this guy really, really pushed himself. You were going to have to be working with him. You were going to have to be at a certain level in order to do the stuff, or you were going to get tagged, or you were going to be frustrated. He wanted it to look real. He wanted it to look authentic. And you were going to have to really raise your game at that point. The only thing that I can I mean, the only part that's even somewhat true is that, yeah, a lot of the stuntmen did get tagged, but that was also where he was at the point where this was not, he wasn't fighting on film before. And so that was something that he did have to learn. So yeah, they got tagged. Was it malicious? None of these guys come out and say it was malicious. None of these, the only person who was coming out and saying this is Quentin Tarantino. You know, Gene Bo doesn't say it. None of the other stuntmen are coming out and saying, yeah, he was being a jerk, he was tagging us on purpose, he was doing this, and thank God Gene LeBeau came in to save American stuntmen. You know, nobody else is saying that except him.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that Jackie Chan talks about Bruce Lee being intense, and him initially being kind of like not necessarily with it, but he started to see the method in his madness. And there's something that Bruce said that kind of set him on, like not set him on his way, but said, all right, I kind of got legs in this game. So it's like you can take someone that's intense and be like, this guy is that, but when you see they're trying to show these videos where he was talking that, oh, someone should kick his behind. That's basically what Quentin Tarantino is saying. Whereas you have someone like Jackie Chan, that's the thing. I'm using Jackie Chan, like saying that this guy's intense, and then at the same time saying, hey, I learned from it, and then I took it on to what I was doing. Is something of saying that, yeah, in this thing, it should be a time of thicker skin, because that's how people were in every field. It's like kind of a tough thing. And then at the same time, I think the actor who played the Green Hornet also said it wasn't just not really tagging them, but he would come up to the actors, and the next time you walk in, and then fist right in your face. So it'd be like that, because he's also a ball of energy. He's trying things, he's testing out things, testing his speed on set, and there's nothing. It's like a comedian on the set of a movie when you say cut, and you're sitting around there like you have like Robin Williams. He's as serious as person as possible. The next, he's turning over to De Niro, cracking him up. And he's like, all right, action. Then he's serious again. It's like that sort of thing. It's like so much time in between takes. It's just like, what are you going to do? Keep himself energized, keep himself motivated. And that's the thing. The other thing is that, whereas even if people felt that way, you're not supposed to upset the thoroughbreds. You keep them doing whatever they do, because when it comes on film, he stays as energetic and doing everything he does. When he gets on there, next thing you know, you're like, wow, that turned into a great scene here. Instead of saying, oh, we're going to work again? All right, I'm going to muster up some strength and do this. Where, but it's a lot of things that put into play. And ultimately, since Bruce is not here to defend himself, why take out his, it's like it feels like he would treat Elvis better than he would do Bruce Lee in this case. So.
Well, the thing is, Bruce Lee doesn't have to defend himself.
Sorry, say that again. You would do it muffled.
I said Bruce Lee doesn't have to defend himself because it's all on record. Mm-hmm. It's all on record. Nothing that Tarantino is saying holds up under any sort of scrutiny if you do just the slightest bit of research. Bruce Lee is like, he's like one of these cats like Hendrix, or Elvis or Tupac or James Brown, where he interacted with a lot of players. He interacted with a whole bunch of people. Everybody's got a Bruce Lee story. It's just like you, and he was like you were saying, but he wasn't just like that with, he was on set. He would go places. He would do games with the kids. Like, here, I'm gonna put this penny in my hand. See if you can snatch it, before I close my hand. And they incorporate that into Kung Fu. That must have been a great scene for him to watch. But he would go, he would do the same thing. He'd come over, throw a kick, and see, right in front of your face, that sort of thing. And, but he did that with everybody. Mm-hmm. Okay. It was so widespread that you would have had a definite groundswell. Like, yeah, he can't be that able. Nobody says any of that type of stuff. Nobody says that because that was a part of his character. It wasn't coming from a malicious place. It wasn't coming, it wasn't coming from any place that was trying to do somebody harm. You have the stories. They said Bruce was, you say, such a ball of energy. The man could sit still. If he did sit still, he always had one leg moving or something, along that. He would just break out into doing push-ups. And so, it's not apology, for Bruce Lee as a person, but that was his character. That was his character at the end of the day. And if you actually wanted to understand his character so you could put him in the film and give something that the people could have enjoyed, I mean, you could have done something. One of the simpler stories is I forget who the actor was who played the Green Hornet, but they used to Indian wrestle. And the guy who played the Green Hornet, he would always win. He would always win. And Bruce Lee would challenge him all the time, and Bruce Lee would lose all the time. And he just said, "Look, you're not going to win." He's like, "I grew up on a ranch, herding cattle and that type of stuff. I got really big forearms. I'm bigger than you. I'm stronger than you. It's just not going to happen." And Bruce would be really frustrated with the whole thing. But that right there is a legitimate story. But even then, if that's the only story that you want to incorporate into this, it's that you just want to show Bruce, you want to humble him for whatever reason. You don't want to. You're spending the rest of the film showing all of these other historical characters, in more of a three-dimensional rounded view. For Bruce Lee, you just want to humble him for the film. He was just a blowhard. There's no way some little 5'7" guy can come over here and beat these guys up. Oh, you can if it's a movie. You can if it's a movie, and it's a movie. David Carradine gets kung fu, he magically becomes half Chinese. Why? Because it's fiction. So it's my movie. I get to win, like all the other cowboys at the end of the day. So
Well, that's the thing that gets kind of lost as they go along, because people don't really understand how the idea that you're the lead, you're the star, and you're almost the lead fight choreographer, and then saying, well, why, like Chuck Norris saying, you just want to have me in a movie to beat me up, and it's like at the same time, that you're going to have a career after this because you have the skills. And they're like, well, we need, like they say to Michael J. No, they call Michael J. White from time to time, and they say, hey, we need a white you, and he sends them guys. He's like, I hate you. Like, I don't like you saying that. And he'd send them the guys that he knew that, white dudes that, like had abilities like him. And that sort of thing. You're in this thing, you could see the lineage of every sort of, martial artist moving from doing a bit thing where they're getting beat up. And the next thing you know, they're doing their own movies, and then if it's successful enough, you got a series, So it's like one of the things where it's like you can't always look at it and say, wow, this guy, he does this movie. And it's like, what else are you supposed to do? That's what movies are. They are these things, but it's just like, hey, this jerk, he decided to let himself. No, he's also thinking about how to fight. But let's finish this off. Only got a couple minutes. I think there's only one other bit in here.
Huh. That's interesting. I wonder what that was about. I wonder what his perspective would have been if somebody asked him to explain it.
See?
It's like, no, they're just not good enough. They're pussies.
See, he stepped over
I
and
want to
he's
make
not
it look
agreeing.
Okay. So he was hitting them to make it look real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they don't like that.
No.
That's unprofessional.
Well, that is unprofessional, but that's been done before in a bunch of movies by people that people say are assholes.
Yeah, and actually somebody else who had a reputation pretty similar to Bruce Lee's in that regards was like Robert Conrad.
Oh yeah.
During that time, yeah. And he did a lot of his own stunts, and he did some really, really gnarly shit. But and I've always been a big fan of Robert Conrad, but in the stunt community, he was known as Robert. Never met a stuntman he couldn't blame Conrad.
The stunt world is
he's fighting for the stuntman
because they're the people that occasionally die making movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is just nuts.
And look, and the thing about it is also, Cliff is a hand-to-hand combat killer.
Cliff is not real. He is all right. I'm done with this. I can't do it no more. All right. I get it, and I get it. We both at times fancy ourselves as writers, and at times you feel that the characters write themselves, but at the same time they're not. Cliff is not real. Stop talking about Cliff. Tell us about your process. He's not a real guy. He's a fantasy.
Cliff isn't a real guy, and even if Cliff was a hand-to-hand combat guy, okay, killer, he's not in a situation where he needs to kill this dude over there. According to you, it's 2 or 3 falls, right?
According to him, he needs a job. Like that's the fantasy about it. It's like this guy needs a job. You know what I'm going to do? Beat up Bruce Lee. Like how is that going to get you the job? Like how is that?
He doesn't. The whole thing is that it's obvious why he wrote what he wrote, but he has no understanding of fighting. Okay, you step into a ring, that's a different fight than you're fighting on the street. Okay, You fight on the street, that's a different, that's a different fight, depending on, you don't want to have a fight in a train station or a bathroom. This is something that fighters understand. Like, no, those are two places you avoid. These things these things are never going to be done. A real fighter understands, okay, if I do have to get into a street fight, what am I using? I'm going to use my palms, I'm using my forearms, I'm not using my knees, my elbows, or my hands because I'm trying not to get hit, headbutt somebody like in the movies or something. These are guys who understand that. So you're taking this character who supposedly is a trained killer, okay, who supposedly is a trained killer, and he doesn't understand. This is supposed to be 2 or 3 falls, and he doesn't understand an exhibition. This dude could lose an exhibition because the only way you could definitely beat this guy. I don't know how to hold it back. Okay, this guy's gonna come over here, throw a kick at me. I'm gonna try to ram cartilage of the cartilage into his brain. Those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
But you can lose in that type of situation. Just because you're a killer doesn't mean you win every fight. That will be part of it. And then the other thing is that you created this character so you could have this ending in that film that you wanted. You needed some guy who was Batman. That's who you were creating at the end of the day. And you go through the film showing him, leaping up on the roofs and, flinging Bruce Lee into a car because you wanted that particular end. You wanted that particular ending. You wanted to show how tough this guy is, but he's not real, as you just said. He's not real. Bruce Lee, okay, was a real living person who could fight, who understood fighting, and you could have, if you wanted to use some stories, that were about Bruce and come in here simply because you wanted to humble him, you could have at least used a genuine story rather than concocting this nonsense. Kind of explain it away by disrespect stuntmen or no disrespect American stunt.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the part. That's the problem with what he said. Is that part?
American stuntmen, which for me is just called disrespectful white stuntmen. At the end of the day, I get to beat up on these guys. Well, here, this is going to be the revenge. This is going to be the revenge for the white stuntman or the white man. And I'm going to throw this little Chinese guy over here into the park. That's the way it comes across to me. I'm listening to it because Bruce Lee was hard on stuntmen, period. Okay, and part of the reason is that, again, if you looked at the fight scenes from the 50s to the 60s, it was throw a punch, block, hit the guy. That was, so you go to a stunt guy and you're like, no, let's try something different. Let's speed it up. Okay, try to block this, try to block that. Of course, this guy is going to be angry with you. He's like, hey, you're making me work. I usually just come in here and do this at the end of the day. No different. He goes to Hong Kong, to do the films over there. He's got all this friction with the director, with the other stunt people. They're like, why, come on, it's not real. Why are you taking it so seriously? Why are you so intense? But he already was able to take stuff he had learned from Hollywood and say, no, this is how it's going to look on film. So if we do it your way, okay, it's one thing. But if we do this, it's going to be more dynamic. It's going to look real. It's going to look like this person actually got hit as opposed to it just being set up and staged. So that has, you got to take that into account. Okay, otherwise it just looks like he was just, you have the actor who's, the guy who just like, I don't care about these dudes. They're just here, they're just fodder. I'm the reason why here. But that wasn't the case. But that's the way he's making it out to be at the end of the day. And he's on Joe Rogan. You can, he's on Joe Rogan. He's on Joe Rogan at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. Joe Rogan is you must know something about him before you get on the show, that he's into fighting. Okay, that he does know about fighting, that this is going to be a question that you're going to have. And the best that he can do to explain all this is about, American stuntmen, G. LaBelle, and pretty much go suck one at the end of the day. It was just, just a bad scene. It's just a bad scene in your film, and incredibly disrespectful to the legacy of Bruce Lee, and incredibly disrespectful to all of those aficionados that he's inspired. Because those of us, who are aficionados, we know the actual history and the legacy of Bruce Lee. So when you see something like this, yes, it is going to get your back up. There was like another Bruce Lee film that came out. This is a dramatization of him fighting Wong Jack-man. And historically, the fight between him and Wong Jack-man was like about 5 minutes, and it ended with Bruce chasing him around the room, punching him in the head or something of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
That the fight that they had in the movie had these guys jumping down like 30 feet, floating to the ground, and doing all that, gung fu stuff at the end of the day. And I fell out laughing watching it because I was positive if Bruce Lee was living and they went to him, he's like, "Is that how the fight happened?" And he would go, "Oh, no way in hell did the fight happen like that. But I like this one better. I look great here. Like I look great. This is no good. Yeah, let me see more of that." That type of stuff. When you're doing that type of stuff, that type of dramatization and so on and so forth, okay, you can easily take issue. You can easily take issue with that. But the idea of that fight was that it was supposed to inspire Bruce to move on and to refine his own style and to go forward with a lot of the things that would make his legacy so concrete with this right now in the future. Right? So I could take those things where this is just really blown out of proportion. Like this didn't happen, but it still stayed true. It still stayed true to his character, the individual that he was throughout the film, at least for the most part. It stayed true to that. This over here, they just got, literally, they just say, "Hey, look, get the first Chinese guy who's willing to come over here and do this. Can you act a little bit? Yeah. Are you willing to be thrown into a car? Yeah. Great, buddy. You're Bruce Lee."
Yeah. So with that said, I was going to play, instead of the clip I was originally planning to play, this I think someone put together of Joe Rogan, of him talking about what happened is that he decided to, when he took on taking Bruce Lee, instead of, like you were saying about that other fight that Bruce had, he would take another martial artist story with Gene LaBelle and just put Bruce into place, because it's about disrespecting someone, looking at someone saying, "Hey, I could do XYZ to you," and he can't. That's the point of the story. It's not about two or three faults. It's about someone saying, being arrogant and saying, "I looking at you, sizing him up, even though he's taller, and saying I could do XYZ to you," and not being able to do it. And this thing is going to get into a little bit other stuff, but it's going to lead to a embarrassing moment for this famous martial artist.
Yeah. People love to make up shit. I was reading up all the shit that Steven Seagal's made up all through his career, because there's a whole thing going on right now where Steven Seagal told everybody that Anderson Silva, he taught Anderson that kick, right? Which is kind of what he's supposed to do, right? I mean, there's videos of him training with Anderson. Well, fuck it, Anderson barely even speaks English. Yeah. Just run around and tell everybody that you taught him it, and you know what? Anderson's so cool, he'll probably be like, yeah, he taught me, he's a good guy.
I always thought that was just him playing a goof.
But Anderson played a goof. Anderson might be playing.
Didn't he do a little Wing Chun in the?
Well, he always does that. He'll do a little like moving the hands funny, and he's just letting you know he's ready to fucking explode in your face,
ready to kick you in the chin.
Yeah, that was a ridiculous fight.
That was ridiculous.
Is he really saying that? Is he really saying that he's the one that taught him?
Yeah, Steven Seagal's really saying that. Boss Rutan went fucking crazy. And Boss Rutan, I'm going to go do an advertisement for his gym. So I'm going to try to get him on the podcast too, because Boss Rutan will have some fucking amazing stories of brawls in Holland. He's just a savage. I love Boss Rutan. Yeah. But Boss went crazy on Twitter. And he's like, what planet is he from? Did he learn this from fucking Disneyland? He's like, Boss Rutan's going crazy on Twitter. He's angry at Steven Seagal.
I heard an unverified story about when Gene LaBelle and Steven Seagal had a...
Yeah,
so this is it. See, we've established the a-hole part. That's the a-hole part of Bruce. That's early in the film, first part of the scene, and then we get to this part where he challenges the guy he doesn't know anything about.
I heard an unverified story about when Gene LaBelle and Steven Seagal had a...
Yeah, that's a true story. That's an absolute true story. Gene LaBelle told me that story. Yeah. Gene tells you it like this. He doesn't actually tell you the whole story.
What's the story?
Well, Steven was trying to say that no one could choke him out. You can't choke him out. He had this move. This move stop you from choking out. So, I was like, all right, Steven, let's try it. I get him in a headlock there. I get him in the rear naked. And he takes this hand, the free hand, and then he just karate chops me right in, the old sisters. And there's the way Gene LaBelle talks, right. He wouldn't even say his balls. He's like the nicest guy ever. He would say something like, right in the old Johnson, and then, and then I guess he got tired after doing that and he just fell asleep. I guess maybe he forgot to go to the bathroom, so he went to the bathroom then.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And if you know Gene LaBelle is like, first of all, he was like one of the original mixed martial artists. He's a judo guy that had cage fights, or it wasn't a cage, it was basically a mixed rules fight where he fought a boxer. You know, he fought a boxer with his judo gi on and took the boxer down and beat his ass. You know, Gene was like, he's like the guy that taught Bruce Lee about grappling. You know, Bruce Lee back in the day thought you could just karate kick everybody in the head and that was the shit, you know. Right. And Bruce Lee actually worked on a lot of like more effective things like leg kicks and short range techniques, Wing Chun and boxing punches and stuff like that. But he really wasn't aware about grappling until he hooked up with Gene LeBell. And Gene LeBell's a fucking gorilla. He's just, you know, national champion judo player, and he's just so fucking ridiculously strong. And I'm sure he grabbed that little 135-pound Chinese man and had him fucking shit in his pants going, okay, now we learn grapple. You know what I mean? You had to learn grappling after you fucked around with Gene LeBell.
So yeah, this is that using that Steven Seagal bit is kind of what I wanted to say. Using, like, you know, because he's making up a story. So how do you make this more interesting instead of having some ground fight? Because that's what it's supposed to be, right? That's what, you know, the best is. The most dangerous stunt person in the world. That's basically what Chuck Norris talks about when he first comes to his school and says, "Hey, I got to choke you out, and this could you can't learn this until I show you this." So it's like that's what it is. Ultimately, you have to, you know, like he's, you know, glamorizing and making it more, you know. No, he's making, you know, he's just taking away, as you said, he's taking away from Bruce's mystique by using this lame character that's supposed to be a stuntman. The job of the stuntman is not to, all right, I'm going to secretly beat you up and kill your chances of getting a job. That's what made the thing really a once upon a time. It's like, this is a total fantasy. Like, how do you try? You know, he's out of work. Somehow you respect the other pretentious actor, the white dude, and then you're going for a job and you're like, I can't take this Asian guy yapping, so I'm gonna beat this. I'm gonna beat him. I'm gonna beat his ass now. So it's like, look at this kind of a split where he can't get any work, and he's like working with another actor who they portraying Bruce as pretentious and total arrogant asshole. And you know what? I'm gonna just beat this guy when it seems like he can be humble, while this other guy is saying, "Hey, you know, I can't do anything for you. I can't give you this job, and you know, thanks for being there for me, but you know, this is kind of it, you know." And that's the other thing. And they're not going to hire me for anything, you know, any more action sort of thing. So you're out, bro. And it's like, okay, I'll take it. I'll take that on the chin. It's like my other job. No, I'm not going to do this. Oh, because he has a history of being a stuntman that beats people up. Yeah, this is a total fantasy. There's an incident, a secret incident that we don't know about, which I guess you can find. This will plug the book a little. You'll find out later that why he doesn't have a regular, but he's already has this bad history, and he, you know, they kind of sneak him in. So anyway, I just want to play that bit. It felt like a Hollywood thing to take a, you know, something where he, you know, the character where a real person took down the famous person that everyone hates. And
Yeah, but nobody hates Bruce Lee.
yeah, that's the thing. So
That's
like,
the problem. You're coming into this and you're like, okay, let me use this guy. You know, who's a jerk I can use? Oh, you know what? I'll use Bruce Lee. You know, this is perfect because he hated stuntmen. And this, you know, well, okay, where's your corresponding evidence for that? Oh, it was in this book. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. That's your interpretation. That's your interpretation of what's going on. And if it's based on Gene LaBelle didn't say that. Gene LaBelle has like, you know, if you go and find like the stuff where he talks about him. Oh man, it's like you would have to like really, 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 really dig, you know, to get somebody to say something about Bruce Lee that would fit the caricature of that film that you would want. And I mean, you'd have to really dig for that. And then you'd have to ignore the 99% of the other testimonials that were like, yeah, you know, no, you know, but no, that was all energy, yeah, sure. A prankster, yeah, without a doubt. Cocky, arrogant, yeah, but the jerk, no, that's not the case. You got to ignore all of that. You can get to the final destination that you want in terms of that scene and how you can portray his character. It's, I mean, because I know at that time where this would have been, this is like around Green Hornet time. I mean, Bruce Lee had learned Wing Chun, but he had also learned, he had also won like a boxing tournament when he was still back in Hong Kong. So he did know how to box. He did know how to box as well. And that was one of the things that made him, because he was already mixing style at that time. And that was one of the things that had made him harder to beat with a lot of the guys that he initially first. Then he's meeting other guys because at the same time you have all these GIs who are back in Japan. That's where they're learning judo
Hmm.
or being introduced to it at that point. And the big thing going across the state wasn't kung fu, but karate. That's what everybody was doing. So, he's coming over here, and this is a system that he's not necessarily, he's not necessarily familiar with. So there's, with judo, yeah, you got traps, locks, and with the karatekas, you have just some really hard, fast, punches, blocks, everything hurts. I remember like one of the first times I fought this dude who was like really into, karate, and you think of movies or something, and I threw a punch and the guy blocked, and it like my whole arm went numb because even the blocks hurt, that type of stuff. And he was like, oh my, goodness, wasn't what I was expecting at all. But this is where he's still like a few years away from Jeet Kune Do, and like all the stuff that he would have that he was going to learn and apply later. So I'm looking at it at that situation right there. But even then, he wouldn't have gone over. He wouldn't have gone over there and kicked the chest. And if he did kick the dude in the chest, okay, that probably would have been the end of the fight because historically, Bruce Lee, even though he was 5'7", this was a guy who was still very, very strong for his size.
Hmm.
This was a guy who could curl 80-pound dumbbells. He was working out with a 300-pound heavy bag. He was very fit, very strong, but he also wasn't going to go in there and say, well, look, I'm going to do all this, blah, blah, blah. He set them up for stuff that he knew that he could win. He wasn't going to come over here and like, 6 foot, you know, heavier than me. I'm going to come over and do this. He's like, no, why don't you try to hit me? And he knew they would never be able to hit him because he was too thick. I'm going to do this. Okay. I'm going to punch and I'm going to throw a punch right at your nose. And as fast as I throw it, you're not going to be able to block it. Count with me. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to throw it on 3. On 3, I'm going to throw the punch and you're still not going to be able to block it. And he would do it all the time. I've done that because I understand the technique behind it to the point where you can throw that. So he would have set him up in that way if he wanted to do it. Those are things that you could have put into the film, but the idea was never to show any of that. It was just to belittle Bruce.
Yeah. It's so before we get out of here, so this is the book that he's putting out here for Once Upon a Time Hollywood, novel by Quentin Tarantino. Ultimately, as far as always with the movie making itself, there's always something interesting in there. But I think um, for me, it's sort of the middle part of the movie when Cliff goes to the ranch where the actor is doing. And the other thing is kind of weird how it's shot because it's shot not like it's shot like it's a film, like it's actual film, but we're on a TV set, right? So in a T or a movie set or whatever it is, there's just tons of lights and stuff like that in front of it. So it's like it's kind of jumping in between reality and fiction, and that's one of the hard things for me with things where it's like, do I need to turn off my sensibilities about this because this part is real and this part is make believe, and that's kind of hard thing to do. But I think movie makers have kind of shown you, like, regretfully, I have to reference D.W. Griffith, where it's like you can just do whatever you want. You can throw out history. You can make up your own heroes out of people that weren't heroes, and you can just do whatever you can. It's sort of like clay, and you see that sort of tradition, and it's across the board as far as filmmakers. It could be even towards like a Spike Lee, where you just sort of mold the clay into it. The romanticism of film, which comes from D.W. Griffith, romanticizing the birth of the Ku Klux Klan. So it's like this is some of the traditions of it. Now it's okay to take something like you were saying about the Bruce Lee fight, and for you, you're like, no, I can't buy into this. I'm looking to see the real fight, and then it's action because it's like this means something to you as a fighter. For like they're looking for the audience and saying we need to add all this extra stuff and do all this stuff, and some of the people are like, yeah, that's cool. But it's at the same time it goes for some of these things. It's I mean it's a tough subject So to kind of do this sort of thing is kind of, I don't know. It's just one of those things where I guess I could just say the movie didn't necessarily work for me, but and then there's other aspects that pushed me away, and then I see this middle part, the middle hour, and I'm like, well, this is kind of a movie I could watch. This is, but then it kind of goes left, and then of course we kind of forget that Leonardo DiCaprio was in there in the first place. His part, maybe they could even cut out most of his scenes and him be like a walk on, and then we got a 90-minute movie. But anyway, that's all I got to say about this. Any words from you? Anything else you got for this?
Yeah, close. It's it's remarkably difficult. Well, that's the director, the writer's job to get me to suspend this at the end of the day. And when you deal with the character, or if you deal with the character that's iconic, something that is very universally known, uh, say like Superman or James Bond, and you decide, well, I'm going to make some really big universal changes. Okay, they need to be really good because people already have an expectation of this character where they're not going to have with the new character. But that would be hard for even somebody like John Wick at this point because there's been so many films about him. You're going to have certain expectations with a character that has that really solid core at the end of the day. When it's a historical figure, when it's a historical figure at the end of the day, in some cases it's even harder because this is someone who was real, and we would already have like, well, no, this person is not going to do this unless you're just saying, well, hey, I'm going to just like really ham this up. It's going to be like Abraham Lincoln fighting vampires. So then we can say, okay, we can throw out a whole bunch of stuff, or America the Motion Picture, where don't take any of this seriously, along those lines. But go to this particular film, and again, the historical people that he's touching on in there, for the most part, these guys are pretty much in line with what you would find out about them historically at the end of the day. Then, for me to come and look at the Bruce Lee one, especially with all that I know, about Bruce Lee and his legacy and his history, and I'm looking at this, one, it's discordant with everything I know, and then two, just the blatant disrespect of Bruce Lee is like, no, won't accept it, can't accept it. What I will say though is that I hope Quentin Tarantino's book is very successful, that it becomes internationally successful, and he does a book signing in China.
Well, they'll give it to him after that. So that's our reaction to before but from the movie. But I'm pretty sure the book is pretty much chapter and verse, just adding a little more to the history of this fictional. Hmm?
No, probably not. I mean, he made a lot of money. He made a lot of money on this film. It was
Yeah.
pretty well received. So he's like, hey, what's a few dollars more, right? No pun
Well,
intended.
with that said, we got one more film left, and we're done with this. we're, we're done. Before I was like, hey, Hollywood, as of right now, like they let him make, Grindhouse, and they somehow went like that's his Howard the Duck. So it's like, but he's like at this point where he's like, I'm only gonna do X amount of films, and I'll have all the reels there. It's like now it's like before it's like, hey, yeah, other people can't get their films made. I mean, look at one of the greatest filmmakers ever, Orson Welles, and up until his passing, he still couldn't get things finished or money for it and this, that, and the other. And people say he's a profligate and all this other stuff. And then you're like, hey, you should only have X amount of films. Not if they'll let you do as many films as you want, but that's his conceit of being, hey, I'll have that. This will be my shelf of stuff, and end of the day, and that'll be, and that'll be it. So we'll be rid of this guy in a little while. He'll be at home watching his own movies. So Spinnerack,
Out.